Welcome to the Power of One. Today, I am going to have a conversation with Ashley Poole. This conversation is so important to young people. Please understand your parents love you and your parents have your best interests at heart. Please pay attention to your parents and don't be rebellious. If you need to speak with someone, you can speak with your parents, counselors, or your religious leaders. But please stay safe and watch the decisions that you make. Ashley, welcome to the show. Tell me about your life as a child. Were you close to your parents and your grandparents on both sides?
Um, my parents, I was closer to like my dad more than my mom. And my mom parents, I didn't know because she was adopted. So my adopted grandparents, I was like uh around them every so often. But my dad's mom and my dad's father, I really was close to them. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell me your life as a teenager. And were you a good teenager? And were you watching TV all the time? And what was your favorite TV show?
Well, life as a teenager was pretty normal up until about like I would hit the age of 9. My mom and my dad, they were going through a divorce, and my dad was an alcoholic. So it became kind of turbulent around that time because my mom would like leave my dad, and then she would go back. It was like she was in limbo, So during that time, it was kind of turbulent, especially dealing with my dad being, an alcoholic. So I kind of had a crazy childhood. And at that time, I was watching like, Soul Train, like ABC one Saturday morning, little cartoons, stuff like that. So it was mainly like a lot of music stuff.
Okay. All right. Now, were you rebellious when your parents were going through the divorce? Did you feel like it was your fault? Did you take it personal? And how did you deal with it?
I knew that it wasn't my fault. I knew that my dad had a problem. Um, I didn't take it personal. Actually, I was kind of happy that my mom was trying to go her separate way and, away from my dad. I was happy that that was happening, because I knew my mom was like very depressed and in a sad mood all the time. You know what I mean? So I was happy that that actually was going on.
Did it
Yeah.
cause you to have any type of behavior problems? Were you a troubled teen to your mom or to your dad?
Well, I didn't really become troubled until maybe like 14. I was living with my mom. Remember, I told you my mom would leave my dad. So my mom would take me and my sister. I have a younger sibling. So it would always be me, my mom, and my sister. And I didn't really start rebelling until I was like 14 because me and my mom would get into it because she held me to like a higher standard because I was like kind of in my dad's place since my dad was there. So when I say a higher standard, I mean by like going to go get my sister from school, like really taking care of her. I felt like I was the other parent to my little sister. So, around like 14, you know what I mean? I started to get into it with my mom. Like we weren't as really tight as we used to be. And that caused me to, to leave and run away from home. I was running away from home at the age of 14.
So you said you started running away from home at the age of 14. Like, where
Mm-hmm.
would you go? Where would you sleep?
Basically, back then, it was this thing on the phone, like kind of like like where you talk to your friends, you meet new people, kind of like the party line type of thing. So I would meet people, and and I just would leave. Like those would be my friends. I would talk to them for a while, and I would just go. You know what I mean? Like my friends in the neighborhood, some of my friends in the neighborhood knew what I was going through. So I would tell them like, don't, if my parents call you, if my mom call you looking for me, please don't tell her that you have any idea. I wouldn't never tell nobody where I was going. That was the thing. The only person that really knew that I was safe and I was okay was my little sister. And we're 7 years apart. So at the age of 14, my sister was 7. And I definitely was telling my sister, like, listen, I can't deal with this, but where I'm going, I'm safe. She knew that I was safe. She knew that more than my parents did.
Okay, so now you're 14, so you run away from home. I know your parents were in a panic.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me something. The friends that you would stay with,
Mm-hmm.
so they wouldn't get permission from your parent. Like I'm thinking 14, these parents should say, let me call your mother and
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you have permission to be here. So tell me how that worked.
Well, I mean, if I did have a friend that like really their parent was really strict upon them, I would just tell their parent what I was going through. You understand what I'm saying? And they would be like, okay, now I see why you're running away. I'll tell them like my dad is, alcoholic. He is abusive. You understand what I'm saying? Like, cause at this time, like my mom was allowing him to come get me and my sister on the weekends. So sometimes he would show up, sometimes he wouldn't. When he did show up, he was under the influence, driving crazy. He almost killed us, like stuff like that. Like it was serious. You know what I'm saying? And during his alcoholism, he was, abusive. He was abusive to me. I got beatings for no apparent reason. You know what I mean? And I was just, trying to just get away from the whole situation.
Now, when you would run away from home and your mom didn't know where you were, because it sounded like you had a great relationship with mom, and like would mom call 911? Did mom put up flyers? Did like any of
My
that occur?
parents, my parents actually, I think they would call 911. And they did have flyers because I had friends that would let me know, like, oh, Ashley, I seen a flyer of you, like just posted around the neighborhood. So, and actually, when I came back a couple of times from being at my little stints, I saw actual flyers of me on them, like
How
in
did
the
that make you
house.
feel?
That made me feel like, whoa, like they really were looking for me. So that caused me to, when I ran away, after that, I would write letters and I would tell them, do not look for me no more.
You,
Please
you
don't.
would say this to
Don't do
your parents. You wrote letters to your
that.
parents.
I would write letters like, listen, this is a hellhole. I don't want to be here. You know what I mean? Please do not look for me and I'm fine where I'm at. That led me to write those type of letters. Like, do not look for me. Leave me alone. I don't want to be involved in
Okay.
with you guys.
Now, were you still attending school?
No, because
So,
I knew
okay,
that that
let's
was the
talk
first
about.
place. I knew that that was the first place they would come look for me. I
Okay,
couldn't
so let's
attend
talk
school.
about like truancy.
Hmm.
Like were they faced with truancy or
No, I mean they never told me any of the such. The
okay,
school probably knew that I was just on my whole hiatus. So I mean, you know what I mean. I don't think that they got a penalty for that. Nobody never said anything to me about that.
okay, okay. So here you're a teenager. Now, would you return back and then leave and then return back and then leave?
Yeah, and but I would return back. It would take me like a month or 2 months. Like I was returning back just on my own. Like I remember one time that I returned back forcefully because I was staying at my friend's house and his dad was like into drugs and I didn't know that like his house was like the crack house, like where they get high at and stuff like that. And the cops came, they kicked down the door in the middle of the night and they found me in there. We were asleep. I was asleep with my friend and they kindly took me to the police station and called my mom. And my mom came and picked me up. So
Okay. And I mean, don't get me wrong, viewers, this is a very serious matter.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's just like, I'm thinking about my children. And I have a
Right.
25-year-old and a 27-year-old. And when they were young, sleepovers was like, okay, listen, I need to
Right.
talk to your mom and, what
That's
you
how my
going
mom
over.
was. That is, I had a strict mother, and that's another reason why I was like, oh, me and her is not meshing. Like she was the type. I need to talk to the parents. Well, where are they? Well, I before you go anywhere, I'm on the phone with them. You understand what I'm saying? That's how my mom was, and I didn't understand it. You understand what I'm saying back
You
then
didn't
because I was a
understand it
kid.
then.
I'm like, you just being a pain.
Right, right. But mom was being a parent
Right.
and
Yeah,
you
she
were
was doing
being
what she was supposed to do.
exactly, and you were being a
Hmm.
teenager. Okay, okay. So did you ever get sent to like a group home or anything?
Yes. I went to the group home probably when I was like 15. I came home. At this time I had came to my grandma's house because remember I told you my mom would leave my dad and my dad moved in with my grandma. So I tried to, stay with my dad and my grandma. It didn't work out. They was getting on my nerves too. So I'm like, listen, I went and told my dad, I said, I do not want to be here. I wanna leave. I wanna go. And he was like, okay, you want to go? I said, yes, please. And then he said, okay, pack your bags. So I packed my bags. He took me downtown, down on Arch Street, and he left me there with like these people. I didn't know what was going on when he left me there. I just know I had my bags packed. And yeah, I left to go to this place called Bethesda that day. And it was a group home.
Now you were close with his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even
Yeah,
though
my
you weren't
grandma
close with
spoiled me. My grandma spoiled me rotten. She did. But me being me and doing the things that I was doing, of course she was upset with me. So it was like that kind of drew a rift in between me and my grandma. You know what I mean?
okay.
Now at this point in time, I'm just feeling like an alien and feeling like I don't belong because I'm doing things to cause these things. You know what I mean? And it's causing things in between relationships with, what I mean, my family members because I'm acting like an idiot.
Okay. Okay. All right. And my young viewers that are watching this, again, you hear Ashley saying at that age, at 14 and 15, she was doing things that she know was not right. And her parents, mom, was doing her job trying to raise her respectfully. But now she's an adult. She gets it. She
Right.
gets it and she understands it. So how long were you in the group home?
So I had went to that group home for 45 days. And
Okay.
then I went to another group home for it was then like Allentown for another 30 days. And then I got placed in my last group home, which was North Star. It was like in Hatboro, Horsham. And I stayed there for like a year.
Okay.
I had actually wanted to get emancipated to become an adult while I was in there and things like that. But it really didn't go my way. I wound up coming home. I wound up coming home at the age of like 17.
Okay. So when you
Yeah.
came home at 17,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you found out you needed a job,
Mm-hmm.
tell me about this life at 17. And let me go back and with you going out and you being this teen,
Mm-hmm.
did you experience anything with drugs as a teenager? And then
Um,
tell me about 17 and when you said, okay, I need a job.
okay, so I probably experimented with like only smoking weed and I would drink from, a little bit, but smoking weed was like really my forte back then when I was that age.
What age?
And
Are we speaking about 14?
I was about 16 when I started
Okay,
smoking weed, like 15, 16 when I was smoking weed and stuff like that. Because I would come home on the weekends from the group home. So that's
okay,
how I made it out of there to come. Once I eventually got to Hatboro Horsham, it was close enough for me to be able to come home on weekend visits every so often. So I was, dibbling and dabbling with drinking and smoking weed. I was listening to music and it had like the use of like drinking alcohol. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I'm hearing. So maybe, hey, this is cool. You know what I mean? So that's like what really led me to, start experimenting with the alcohol. And of course, some of my friends were smoking weed. So I'm like, oh yeah, well, let me try smoking weed. You know what I mean? Weed was first. You know what I mean? And I was smoking cigarettes too.
okay.
I was smoking cigarettes too. So I was smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, and drinking alcohol. And when I came home, finally, when I was 17, I knew that I had to go to school. My dad, because I was going to school in a group home. So I was in the 11th grade. So when I came home, my dad had, you know, found a way because I didn't want to go to regular school. I'm like, well, can I go to night school? So my dad had put me in the night school because I would have had to go to Martin Luther King, that school I really didn't want to go to. So he put me in night school. So that's how I ended up in night school.
Okay. And you completed, got your diploma.
I didn't even complete that. That that lasted for a couple of months. Once again, being around the wrong people, my friends and stuff. I wanted to play and hang out and stuff like that. They skipping, they ain't going to night school. I Before I go home, I don't even want to, I'm smoking, you know what I mean, and things like that.
Okay.
So I didn't
Okay.
even finish. I didn't even finish. I didn't even finish night school
Okay.
at that point. I had finished school, but I didn't finish at that point.
Okay. All right. So tell me about when I'm sure you needed money and you
Mm-hmm.
said, okay, I need money. And tell me about your first job.
So, well, I was working when I was 14. My cousin was working at this aquarium store, so I, was selling like fish and stuff like that. So from a young age, I already knew like, okay, you got to work if you want some money, like, you know what I mean? So, that was really like my first job, but I really didn't start getting into like, okay, well, I need money to survive until I was about to have my daughter because I got pregnant at 18.
Okay.
That's when I'm like, okay, how am I supposed to take care of my daughter? Because my baby father, he had a okay job. It was making like $200 a week. This is not going to work,
Right.
So then I came up with the idea of becoming a stripper. I was like, you know what? I might as well get some fast money, and that's what I did. I went to the strip club and I became a dancer.
So did you know someone? I heard you before speaking about the company you keep. So
Mm-hmm.
did you know someone who was a stripper and you said, you know what, maybe I'll try that? Or was this something that you thought about as a child or you saw something that made you want to pursue this?
So my cousin, when I was about like 14, my cousin was like a year older than me. She was dancing. She was doing like private parties and stuff like that. So she would come home and she would tell me about these things. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, so I'm hearing that. And then, like I told you, when I was younger, I used to watch like Soul Train and things like that. And when I would watch Soul Train, it used to be dancers that used to be inside the cages. And I would look at it and I would be like, oh my goodness, I want to be like that person and I want to be that girl that's in the cage. You know what I mean? Like that's what I wanted to be like when I was younger. I'm like, oh man, that would be good, cool. So, you know what I mean? Me seeing that and then me knowing somebody who was into that lifestyle, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, well maybe I should get into that.
And how long were you stripping?
Um, it was about, let me see, from like 19 to maybe like 26. It was like an on and off type of situation.
Okay, but you already had your daughter at this point.
Yes.
Now, were you raising your daughter?
Mm-hmm.
And like, who would watch your daughter at night?
So with that question, my grandma played a big part in that. My
This is
grandma,
your dad's mother, right?
yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes. My grandma was, basically like taking care of my daughter and watching her at this point in time. Yeah.
Okay.
So she was giving me a lot of help, like, you know what I mean, with me living my life that crazy back then. My grandma was a real, you know what I mean, like strong influence in my life with taking care of my daughter.
Did grandma know what you were doing?
Grandma didn't know at first, but grandma found out because my grandma used to go through my stuff, and I would keep I would keep my dance stuff in a closet, and I will keep it behind stuff. But my grandmama is like a clean freak, and she cleans up very often. And her cleaning up leads to, you go through things, you make sure this goes here, this goes there. And she went into my closet and she found my dance clothes. And how I knew was that I came home ready to go to work, and I could not find my bag. So at this point in time, I'm like, oh, I'm mad. I go to my grandma and I'm like, grandma, like, did you move my bag? And she's like, yeah, I moved your bag. And I threw it in the incinerator. So from there, she let me know that my stuff was gone and I wasn't ever getting it back.
Okay.
So,
And
mm-hmm.
you know what? We hear about young people and like doing things and then like some of these sometimes when I go into like these press conferences and things like that, and I often hear people say like, "Are you going through your kid's room? Are you looking in their room?" And I did that with my
Mm-hmm.
young people. Like my mother would do that all the time. I have two older brothers, so I'm the baby and the only girl. And my oldest brother would be like, "Now, how did mom find that?" You know, because my oldest brother was into some stuff, but my mom would go through all of our things. She would go through
Mm-hmm.
all of our things, and I condone the mothers, the fathers, the grandparents, the guardians who are doing that. You are under my roof,
Right.
and you're going to abide by my rules and
Mm-hmm.
understand I don't set these rules to hurt you. I set these rules to protect you.
Right.
So kudos to grandma. I know you weren't happy because you know you're doing what you have to do what you think is right at the time. And no
Mm-hmm.
judgment. You know what I mean? No judgment to anybody. We've all made decisions that we're not proud of. So you hiding that from grandma is an
Mm-hmm.
indication of respect, an
Mm-hmm.
indication that you valued what your grandma thought about you. So at that time, I know you were upset. Did you ever think to yourself, like, I'm embarrassed that my grandmother found this out?
Um, yeah, I was embarrassed. I was, but I was more so upset about, oh my goodness, all this money that I just spent on all these clothes are down the drain. Now what am I going to do? Like, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So, but I was embarrassed, but I think I was more so upset about, that she was going through my stuff. Why are you going through my stuff? Like, you know what I mean? I was more so like that than embarrassed about, her finding out that I was a dancer,
Okay.
because that caused me to just leave. Now I'm getting on that. That caused me to just drop everything and leave. Now you know what I'm doing, and the embarrassment. You understand what I'm saying? And the being upset that you're going through my stuff. Oh, now I'm going to use that to run off again, and that's exactly what I did. And I left my daughter with my grandma.
Oh, wow. So how long did you leave your daughter for that time?
I was like out there for years, but like the thing about me is that I kept on coming to my grandma's house. I would come throughout the week, you know what I mean, on the weekend, make sure that my daughter was okay. But I was still living a life of being, a stripper and being, and then I got into smoking wet and things like that. So I was just, all over the place. And my grandma could tell, what I mean, that I wasn't the same as I was, because when you're doing those type of drugs like the wet and everything, that definitely changes your whole, what I mean, like characteristics of you. You know what I mean? People can tell.
Okay. So now you were smoking wet. Did you did you use other drugs as well when you were using the wet?
Not at that time. I wasn't into nothing at that time but just smoking dippers, smoking weed, and drinking alcohol. I didn't do the harder. Well, that is hard, but I didn't
Right.
experiment with other drugs until later on down the line. You know what I mean? But at that time, I was only like smoking dippers, smoking weed, drinking
Now,
alcohol.
what other drugs did you use later on down the line?
I used cocaine.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me now.
Hmm.
Well, let me ask another question. And you
Okay.
doing all of that,
Hmm.
did you ever were you ever a victim of like human trafficking? If so, you don't have to name any names, but share that experience with us.
Well, of me being a dancer and everything, I think that the dancing was one of the things that brought me into like the escorting and the meeting men and doing things for money. But I was a victim of human trafficking. But I didn't know that's what it was until after the fact of me doing it. But yeah, I had a cousin that was like, "Oh, you want to make some money?" And I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, because at this time now I got my own apartment, I got bills. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to get my life together too, because I went to hair school, so I'm going to hair school, and you know what I mean. I need something else to do so I can pay my bills. And so my cousin come along like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna set up these dates for you, and I'll take you. You give me part of the money, and then you get this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So that happened for like maybe like 2 years, and then what the ending of that was is that I was in school. My cousin called me. It was one night. I was tired. I didn't feel like doing anything. I'm like, I'm going home. She like, oh no, I got this call for you. It's $250. Like it's only going to be a half an hour. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. All right, well, come and get me. So I go to the hotel. She takes me to the hotel or whatever. As I'm walking in, I can see the man at the front desk. He's like shaking his head like this, but I don't pay any mind. I'm like, oh, whatever. What is he doing? I go upstairs and I go inside the room. Me and a guy, we talk about, what the proposition was. You know what I mean? Okay, yeah, I'm going to give you this for that. Okay. And next thing you know, the police comes from the next room and it was this thing. I get arrested. And I was so sick because I'm like, they like, well, is anybody outside? Did anybody bring you? And I'm being loyal to my family. I'm like, I came by myself. So they take only me. My cousin gets away. So when I get out, because I was only in there for a couple of hours because I got out on ROR because I really wasn't, what I mean, like a trouble, person with the law. So, they finally let me go. And I called my cousin and I'm like, yo, like I got in trouble. That's why I never came out. Like, this is crazy. And she's like, oh, it is. And next thing I'm dealing with having, what I mean, being labeled as a prostitute. And she's just living her life normal, getting good jobs. And me, on the other hand, I'm dealing with this, you know what I mean, on my background. Like,
So
what?
you had to go to court and you were charged, correct?
Yes, I was
Wow.
charged. Yeah.
Okay. Ashley, I thank you so much for sharing your story with me. Real quick,
Mm-hmm.
what message do you have for that teen who is thinking about running away? What message do you have, real quick,
Mm-hmm.
for those teenagers who are hanging with people that are making bad decisions and that can alter their life?
You have to be careful of who you hang around. You have to be a leader because if you're a follower, you know what I mean, that's you're going to have a problem. You know what I mean? And people tend to, try to be manipulative to the people who they think that they can, you know what I mean, like manipulate. So you have to have your own mind. You have to stand your ground, and you have to. It's all about morals. You know what I mean, and principles. You know what I mean. You got to keep your morals and keep your principles tight. You know what I mean? Hold on to what you know, and you know right from wrong. You know what I mean? So you just gotta, do the right thing. Maybe find activities, hobbies to do to be in place of being out on the street because there's nothing out in the street but drugs and jail and murder. That's it. It's nothing out there. Find hobbies and things that you like to do.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. It is very important that you watch the company you keep. Someone may be the result of you making a decision that can change your life forever. As you heard, Ashley's life has forever been changed, where she cannot get certain jobs because of the arrest that she experienced at the hands of a family member. Please watch the company you keep. Peace and blessings.